Okay, so thoughts. What is cyberpunk?
What is cyberpunk? Well, that's a pretty confusing question to start with, but in short, it is a subdivision of science fiction, which was mainly popular from the beginning of the 80s on, and has had many explosions of popularity since from there on. Although it never reached again the kind of popularity that at these heights, let us say, and it is. It speaks about a series of themes which are pretty actual, some of them at least, and some others that are sort of in the back seat right now, like the fear of corporate totalitarianism and stuff like that on one end, and the anxieties and reflections about the interlinking of human consciousness and human neurology with technology on the other.
Would you
And
describe? Sorry, go on.
okay, and what else? Basically, the it was born in a time in which the eventual repercussions of interlinking and technology such as the internet was in its infancy, but people in the know were already starting to think about the possible repercussions and so on and so forth. And some of the things have proven, I would say, prophetic, and others less so.
Would you describe Lane, serial experiments Lane as cyberpunk?
Sort of like the purely technological aspects in are certainly explored in Serial Experiment Lane, but Serial Experiment Lane doesn't consider really the social political implications that the writers in the 80s were particularly focused on this idea that oh yeah, the USSR has proven to be a freaking totalitarian state by now. But if we were if we were libertarians, we will do the same shit because the corporation will be totalitarians too, and so on and so forth. Those serial experiment lane doesn't really care about the
Yeah,
things as pedestrians, as politics, and so on and so forth. But it goes straight for metaphysical philosophy at some point, in part because the main writer was, I don't remember his name, but he also
Chiaki
did a
Konata,
whole
I think.
season of, yeah, that guy. He also did
Uh,
a whole season of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is remembered as the most, of Digimon, is remembered as the most trippy of them all, and some stuff like that.
yeah, I
And
think.
he has an interesting history because his parents, which is pretty rare in Japan, were the Pentecostals, and then moved the church a lot and so on and so forth. So when he was a kid, you had a lot of interesting and different theological and philosophical ideas to think about, let us say, while his parents were doing the same because they were trying to decide what church they wanted to be part of. I think this is one of the core points inside of Serial Experiment Lane, and one of the reasons why it is the kind of show that is not very common inside of normal cyberpunk.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of cyberpunk. It is different in other ways.
Well, I
Y-
would also say one aspect of the cyberpunk subgenre is it seems to me it starts out with characters that are they're kind of like in the lower end of the social class, and they're kind of like criminals or people outside of the law trying to make ends meet.
Hmm. Yeah, on the social, I think this is part of the social, the political aspects of the genre.
Yeah, because
Since,
yeah, go on.
yeah, no, go. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
because Lane has got some corporations doing some shady stuff in the background, but
Yeah.
as George pointed out, they are not like it's not from the perspective of some little guy, the ordinary person, or basically, I think the Wikipedia article describes cyberpunk as low life and high tech, um,
Mm.
which
That's a
yeah.
perfect description.
Yes, this is pretty good for Wikipedia.
There's also so so cyberpunk always takes a negative view about the repercussions of science, right, as a genre. Um,
In general, but not always. Like there is, it takes a realistic approach and view of human nature in the sense that uh, the people around, even if the protagonist is the low life kind of hero that fights the system and so on and so forth in most of the classic cyberpunk stories, such as Neuromancer and so on and so forth. Nobody is ever portrayed as particularly good virtues in the light, you know? It's like this guy is trying to do what it takes to survive, basically.
would
Yeah,
This guy is. Yeah.
would
it
you
sort of
dis?
has that. Oh,
No, no, yeah, you go
I
on.
was gonna say it has that sort of R type of morality.
So,
Mhm.
so would you describe Ready Player One as cyberpunk?
Ready Player One, I would describe as millennials sneering at boomers, more or less, because the whole idea, Gen X and millennials sneering at boomers, because the whole idea is that the pop culture is what saves it's what saves the regular culture, more or less, in the end. Like we have a dystopian kind of society and so on and so forth, and it's not exactly an acres that solve the issues. It's more nerds by the virtue of the being nerds, more or less.
So the word cyberpunk has the word punk in it. Where does it come from?
That's a good freaking question. Like I've
Uh,
had anything.
guess if
I've
I
had,
would have to guess, it would probably be the fact that cyberpunk is sort of a reaction type subculture, same way how punk music is a reaction to progressive rock.
hmm, yeah, I can sort of see it in these terms. I more like it's also that there is a clear association between cyberpunk and steampunk, I suppose, and the other various genre of stuff called punk, more or less, with the ethos of punk music in itself, and the kind of politics the singers and the authors would have, more or less. It's more of an extended cultural milieu, I will say.
So it's basically punk for nerds or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Although, to be honest, though, the punk music is also nerdy in some aspects.
Mm.
I don't know. I kind of
Yeah.
yeah. Go on.
Mm.
No, no, you can say.
I suppose the punk music can be described as nerdy in the sense that if you will be in the 80s. You would have been in the same kind of social circles as the nerds, if you liked punk music. In that sense, I suppose, and in the sense that anyway the jocks wouldn't like you.
Hmm.
I don't know if how thematically linked that you would have been at the time. Now, certainly it is, but it is by reflection because cyberpunk nerds liked cyberpunk in the end, basically.
Yeah, I guess the cyber part, well, it comes out from the technology, but also from um, the hacking part. Because if I recall, I think in the anime they talk about like being cyberpunk or being an edge runner, which I believe is supposed to be the same thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Um,
And
okay.
there is an interesting thing here because cyberpunk also had exploded, and there was a role-playing tabletop game about it. And in that game, you have like various kind of characters because not everyone wants to play an hacker, so you get to play the mercenary, the gangster, the rock musician, the parents, and stuff like that. That's the kind of classes that are there.
You
And hmm?
you don't get to play one of the corporations.
You,
As
you
You
actually
can play one of the corporations, but it's like playing lawful evil in the end. The theme will be that you are playing the heroes. You know what I
yeah, yeah. Um,
But in the first in the original stories of the in the original stories, like in Neuromancer and so on and so forth, there the protagonists are all hackers or all netrunners, basically. But that was the origin of the concept. The origin of the concept was talking about the enmeshment of technology and mind, technology and human consciousness. And so the protagonists were the hackers, the guys who put the cable, the USB cable in their head and linked on the internet, which was how going to the internet was portrayed, basically.
is the Matrix cyberpunk?
I suppose in many ways it is. It is also Gnostic, which isn't necessarily something that Cyberpunk always is, but it um, it goes well together. Let us say there are similar themes there are similar themes around.
So the genre did not arise out of the cyberpunk game. Like the genre was already there when the
Yeah,
tabletop
the
game came
Cyberpunk
out.
game was very yes. The Cyberpunk game was very quick in coming out after the original stories came out, but already there were some concessions on how can I make a game in which everyone is an hacker? What happens if the corporation enters the room and shoots everyone when they're leaked? There has to be someone to shoot back. You know what? Purely game mechanic stuff that uh, went on in the genre of cyberpunk too. Like after that, there were also new stories, new cyberpunk stories, and not everyone had to be an hacker anymore, basically. So it was that influential, I would say.
And the game, the video game, Cyberpunk 2077, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, was based on this tabletop RPG.
loosely, yes.
Loosely, yes.
So it has some of the, I guess it references some of the game, and some of the
Mhm.
characters are based on the game, but the game itself, it's not even an RPG. It's very much just one of those typical modern third-person action games.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
suppose the whole RPG, anything which has a plot which is even a little bit complex by now.
I haven't played the game. Have you played the game, Thoughts?
I've played some, but it was the time when it was full of bugs, so I had it. I gave it back basically. I got a refund after a while.
Oh,
Uh,
I played it.
I heard that they later patched it up, but I think a AAA game should come out already fucking patched because I'm paying 70 fucking dollars for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I refuse to play buy anything, any video game that's like 60 or 70. That's why I
Mm.
always wait for sales.
That's very wise because by now you're paying $70 for a beta test basically because they figured out you don't have to go to get out a finished product because gamers apparently are this dumb and they will play beta testing for you and pay you so you can release it half finished and then polish it with patches again,
Well,
which is perfectly fine by me because I just ask for a refund, you know.
there you go. It's a win-win. I was also gonna say, even with all those patches and bugs, which from what I played, it was mostly there. It's not even worth $70 considering it's not. I mean, it does have some decent content, but it's more or less just the oh, you go to one place, you do
Yeah.
one mission, rinse and repeat.
so,
Also, I don't know if this was changed, but the game gave you the opportunity to have your starting character work for a corporation or be an independent or being a cyberpunk basically.
Oh yeah,
And
those.
all three it was perfectly uninfluential on what you were doing all day, more or less.
Yeah, that hasn't that hasn't changed. The only time it would change is if you had a mod or if you just pretend, oh, let's say for example you're some kind of street kid, you would put your stats in, let's say guns and shooting, but you would be bad at technology.
Okay, I suppose that is the part they call the role playing in that game.
Yeah,
so
those free options didn't really matter. It's just, oh, new cuts. It's just here's a cutscene.
it's a movie game, I
which
guess.
is which is pretty bad, which was pretty bad to me, to be honest, because it should be in the setting the most important choice you will freaking do when making your character, you know.
I would say one game that's cyberpunk and is modern cyberpunk and has better RPG mechanics would be Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Deus Ex fits Cyberpunk a lot better,
Yes.
even if you know it is also a conspiracy game on the style of Hideo Kojima.
So I guess we have agreed that cyberpunk games have been done better before. I guess what about anime? What would you do? You guys have any picks for best cyberpunk anime, if there are any good ones?
I would say one example of a cyberpunk anime would be like Cyber City ODO. You know, it's like a very old OVA by Madhouse.
Oh,
Mm. Well, I suppose everything of the Ghost in the Shell franchise will count, roughly, even if there is a lot of different things. It also goes a lot pretty deep into some cyberpunk themes, such as machine fusing with flesh and consciousness and informatics being the same thing, and so on and so forth. So I would say the Ghost in the Shell franchise in itself would all count as cyberpunk. And I suppose Battle Angel Alita, you can count it as cyberpunk in most ways, but also it is pretty different in others. It is difficult to pinpoint something in anime that I will say 100% yet. Yes, this is 100% cyberpunk, but it is also because cyberpunk, due to the the breadth of its themes and so on and so forth, can also be vague, let us say, which
Yeah.
has been one of the weaknesses, I
Suppose
suppose.
another example would be Cyberpunk would be Akira.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course, absolutely. That goes. That is pretty cyberpunk. I would say 90% cyberpunk.
Okay. Um, yeah, I guess we could start talking about the anime then. Um,
Okay.
so, so it's directed by Studio Trigger, which, as
Yeah.
you know, broke off from Gainax a while ago. It's directed by Hiroyuki Imaishi, who directed Kill la Kill, Garen Lagann, and
Hmm.
something called Promade, which I have not seen. Um,
It appears to be pretty good as a kids show, something like that.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. How did you like it?
I thought it was decent. It's pretty much your standard Trigger
Yeah.
anime movie. It's kind of just very over the top. There's not really a whole lot to say other than it's very over the top.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So Studios League, well, they have a pretty signature style, I will say. Like you can recognize the Studios League show, I suppose.
yeah, so I asked someone for his, I guess, somebody who doesn't like Imaishi,
Mm.
for his view on Hiroyuki Imaishi's work, and this is what he had to say. So, Imaishi tends to be a lot more Western influenced when it comes to animation direction. The two series that exemplify this are Panty and Stocking and Magical Shopping Arcade Abenobashi, the latter of which being a worse offender, IMO, in my opinion, since it wasn't really advertised as that on the bots. I find a lot of the quote cartoon humor unquote type of comedy to be vulgar in ways that anime isn't really. Some people really
Mm.
like that, but I can't stand it. I think he's a good director and I even enjoy some of his stuff. I just don't like how I feel that he would rather be more cartoon than anime. That said, Space Patrol Luluko was fantastic. I guess his series ride a fine line that can sometimes push um, themselves too far when Imaishi's quote jerking himself too much unquote. I think they fail for me. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. Um I'm okay with Garen Lagann and Kill la Kill, but other than that,
Mm.
yeah.
I liked both a bit, quite a bit. Like I would say, not my favorite stuff, kind of stuff in either case. But Gurren Lagann has some very nice both teams and freaky moments of fuck yeah, and Kill la Kill. Like, it wedges a little bit too much for me into the Eki territory, but it's fine. I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, some people say that. Yeah, I guess that given that you're talking about the anime, in a lot, what's the connection? Do you guys see any historical connections between the cyberpunk genre and Japan itself? Is because in a lot of, or at least this is what I've heard, is that in a lot of cyberpunk series, and for example in this one as well, like one of the corporations has a Japanese name.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
what's that about?
You know, this kind of stuff, on one side, you could say Japan is a pretty cyberpunk freaking country in some things because it marries high technology and sociopathy in some
Yeah.
in, in some ways. But also, you have to remember that the cyberpunk, the genre of science fiction, was born in the 80s, and in the 80s, there still hadn't been the big crash the of the Japanese financial system that would, among other things, kill the OVA and stuff like that, you know. And in that period, if you remember, even movies like Back to the Future 2 and stuff like that, Japan was imagined to be the country, the economic superpower of the freaking future because it was an economic superpower before the speculations and money lending came to their course, let us say, and uh, and the financial system crashed.
Yeah,
So often in science fiction, you see in the near future, and you see like lots of Japanese stuff and so on and so forth. Even Blade Runner, like
Oh yeah, Blade Runner.
yeah, even Blade Runner, you have to think that uh, sushi was pretty popular, like about in some circles in California, but it was more or less unknown in most of the West as a kind of food. And the movie starts literally with our protagonist eating sushi and like framing the idea that yeah, Japan is a colossus of economic and cultural power in here.
yeah,
Well, I would say nowadays it's not an economic power, but it is sort of a social cultural superpower. Not as much as the
Mm.
U.S., but it's up there.
I,
Yeah, yeah. Japan has managed to maintain much. I will say even grow its soft power projection, despite the economy going steadily worse. But
yeah. I mean, I
we
guess
wouldn't
this
be
is
talking about a fucking anime if you.
yeah. I mean, I guess this goes a little bit into some of the complaints which some people have about the genre, that it's
Mm.
like trying to be too nostalgic about the past, like all those neon lights in the street. That was how people imagined the future back then. So, like, why should you have that if you, now? Like, isn't that like why should you play Japan? Like, if you're making Cyberpunk now, why you shouldn't make Japan out to be a big deal because those predictions turned out to be wrong. So why are you like you're not really at that point you're not really trying to predict the future or anything. You're just looking at like
And yeah, I get what you mean. I suppose the aesthetic went into its own direction respect to the predictions, like the prediction in itself of the joining of man and machine and this kind of stuff, and the absolute state of the human mind when you are constantly connected to the fucking internet. That was a pretty good freaking prediction, I would say. That Japan would remain a big economic power wasn't, but now that we are, the aesthetic is remained just as important as the prediction. I will say more, basically, in the mind of people when they say what is cyberpunk and what is not.
yeah, it's sort of like when you try to imagine your generic European fantasy setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So this anime, by the way, does the word edge runner mean anything outside of this anime? Have you heard of it before?
I, so
Uh,
I sort of remember it being used in the Cyberpunk role-playing game as a name for basically the players, the adventurers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because basically that's what the characters
Yeah.
talk about being like. One character at some point says that like Edgerunners are not remembered by the way that they live, but by the way that they die or something. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So this anime aired on Netflix. It's a Netflix anime, and it's probably so basically when Netflix started to do anime, some people predicted, like Giga predicted that it might be a big deal. But really, the only thing that came out of it was um, Devilman Crybaby, and maybe Arcane, if you consider that to be an anime. I don't, but yeah. Um, so was this anime a big deal? Well, I saw a bunch of threads on A and V um, a few weeks ago, but
Mm-hmm.
and like people joking about how like Trigger saved Cyberpunk, or the old joke that Trigger saves anime. Some people made that too. Um,
Well, it certainly made an impression in the first, in in the immediate, let us say, it certainly made an impression, and people,
yeah,
proliferated memes, which is always a good sign of being accepted, in the collective consciousness of the hypnagogic machine dream, which is the internet and now society and stuff like that.
yeah. I think,
We have to say if it will have staying power, basically.
and if Devilman Crybaby said it didn't to go by, then the answer would be no.
No.
Uh,
Mm.
uh, so um, I came across an interview by Imaishi, the director, and and the producer, talking to each other, and so one of the things they're talking about is how this is because since this is a Netflix anime, this was an unusual experience for them because all the episodes came out at once. And I think one of the reasons why I feel that like no like there was one thread on A talking about it, um, like today, and which is not that bad, I guess, given that it's been a while since it came out. But basically, if it had been Imaishi says that usually like in normal Japanese TV anime, like uh, like after the first episode has been released, while they're working on the rest of episodes, like they will get reactions from the audience
Mhm.
while they're still making the series because some episodes are out. Um, and yeah, I mean, this was one of the complaints which when Netflix started to do anime, um, because so this is a Netflix original, I think, but there's also
Mhm.
a bunch of anime which like which was not made by Netflix in any way, but it's only aired on Netflix, not on other services. And
Yes, of course.
one of the complaints that people had was that like in the anime community, it's sort of a quote unquote tradition, like to talk about
Mm.
the anime every week as an episode comes
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, and
It's also tradition to like wait 3 episodes, watch the first 3 episodes to understand if you like it, if it's good, or if it's not. I suppose that the whole Netflix standard appends those traditions, as
yeah.
technology often knows.
Yeah, and I mean, Imaishi himself says that it felt a little bit weird that like to get to only get the reaction only about 6 months after they actually made the thing. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think that's all. That's okay. I guess about the production. Um, yeah, the script apparently most of the story came from CDPR, the CD Projekt, the game studio, which which made the Cyberpunk 2077 game, which we talked about earlier, Ron.
Mhm.
And so one of the major differences that they made, though, was the trigger made to the script was introducing Rebecca's character, which is supposed,
Obviously, they couldn't flick this function without having a lolly around.
yeah, uh,
Yeah.
and so Imaishi has um, like I don't know if it's a cope or not, but this is his explanation for having her character. So Rebecca is a character that wasn't in the original script. It was made by Trigger. Um, in the case of 2D animation and Trigger's anime-like character design, it's very difficult to draw different characters. For example, if Panam, Judy, and Rogue stand side by side in a game, you will naturally be
Mhm.
able to tell them apart. However, if you draw it with the distorted feeling of 2D animation, it will all look the same. Minor differences in age and texture of clothes are all gone, and you can only distinguish them by color. That's why we intentionally create height and physique differences in anime. If you don't do that properly, you won't reach the point where the viewers can unconsciously identify the characters. That's why I put out a short character like Rebecca. So that's I don't know if that's if
Yeah, it's like
Spectator
okay,
jokes.
it's like whatever makes you sleep at night. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we have a Lodi character, right? Nothing else.
Well, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
a lolly
And
bait.
this is why you need a lolly. Sure.
Well, it's more lolly bait. I wouldn't say it's really a lolly character. She's sure no, but I see her more as like a midget than a lolly, in my opinion.
Yeah, she didn't really feel like Loli character in terms of like characterization, the way she speaks,
That's
and
like
all
No,
more
that.
ridiculous.
she's not characterized as a moe character, but I can think of some lollies that will fit. Let us say, like uh, she's more of the kind of character you see in a magical girl show. Like you have the nice girl, you have the timid girl, and you have the brash girl. You know, and they are all lollies. And in this case, there's the brash girl, and uh, and that's it. You know what I mean?
So if you, I mean so since you played the game and watched the anime, George, did you feel like the writing was CDPR writing? Was it like the game, or like if I hadn't
Uh,
told you, like if I hadn't told you that like CDPR decided what the story should be and all that? Um,
Nah, the writing of the game was pretty mediocre, to be honest.
yeah.
This is uh, this is a bit better, I'd say. So Studio Trigger is not famous for being such great writers either, but I suppose they know the medium a lot better in the case of anime, and I suppose they wrote some little things around and so on and so forth to make everything fit better.
Well, I would say to add to that, the writing and well, I wouldn't say so much the writing, but kind of the whole action set pieces and the objects are based on the game. As far as the
Mm.
writing is concerned, I suppose the only difference is in the anime's case, the whole like oh if you put in a lot of like implants you become crazy. It's more of a plot point in the anime, whereas in the game it's just oh here's a side mission you basically have to defeat all those bosses who happen to be psychotic.
Yeah, cyberpsychosis in this is a wedding theme, and it's all about main characters rise and fall, and and the idea that there's like no, no escape in this world, that like you have to ration yourself or else you will like literally go insane. It's terrible.
S-
Mhm.
so
Oh, welcome,
yeah,
Anonymous, by the
welcome.
way.
Yeah, sorry. I use my phone as an alarm clock, and the phone got unplugged and died. So
So
as you
Excellent.
do.
I can relate to that. That has happened to me a few times.
so I, I
Mhm.
I was able to dig up an interview with Imaishi, the director. So apparently, basically, CDPR decided what the story should be, the story beats should be, but towards the end, around episode 9 to 10, was almost entirely created by Trigger. Um, did you feel like there was any difference in between the ending and I guess the start? Um, like, could you feel that it was more triggery than the start?
Mm.
If if I would say something on that, it would just be that it has an ending that isn't like pure nihilism. So I mean, I guess in that capacity, it's more triggery. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
hmm, that's interesting because apparently, um, like they made it. CDPR made it an absolute requirement that the theme of the story should be that if you make an enemy of Night City, you can never win, and that it was assumed from the beginning that the main character would lose. Like that,
mhm.
like you couldn't have, you, like you couldn't. Trigger couldn't like make a miracle happen for the protagonist.
Mm,
Mhm.
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's also the fact that even the tabletop games, the whole character Adam Smasher, he's basically ridiculous in every stat except for intelligence. So it's basically, oh, if you if you try to deal with him, you're basically dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this, but if I'm not mistaken, the story is set before the events in the game. By the way, Heraclius, have you played the game?
No, I've never played the game. I think I told
Si-
when it was about coming out. I heard all this stuff about it, and I always had the opinion of like, this is a terrible world. This isn't a world I want to live in. Why would I want to play this game? Like, at least Deus Ex is about like overthrowing or like dealing with these bastards in some way.
well,
Uh,
since you like the anime now, I mean, the intention obviously was to make people want to play the game. So, since you like the anime, do you feel like
I
playing the game a little bit more now?
no.
No. Okay. I guess it didn't work. It didn't work. Okay.
As I said before, I actually volunteer. I played the game more or less when it came out, and it was a mess of freaking bugs. So I got a refund, and we had a little need about the AAA studio AAA games should come
Oh
out at
yeah,
least finished. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
I saw all those memes and clips and
Yes.
everything about
Yeah.
glitch after glitch. They didn't even have working police. Yeah, like 2001 GTA was more up to date than this.
Um.
Well,
I'm told that it runs better and all the basics run fine now, but it's like, well, okay, the basics run fine now. Is it a good game? I've
uh,
never seen
Go for it.
anyone make that
I would
case.
say it's. I wouldn't say it's not a bad game, but it's fairly standard.
Yeah.
Mm. It gets mediocre, like
Yeah, it is
Immortal would
mediocre.
say.
I mean,
Mm.
so in preparation for this cast, I watched some other podcasts, and the people, some of the people there, I don't know, maybe it's because of the anime that they changed their mind, but they were saying like, or that's just because like the people who complain about bugs, they were just poor people on shitty old uh, generation consoles. Um,
Yeah.
if it was on PC, you wouldn't get any problems on the first day and all that.
Look,
That is not true.
Who are they talking about?
That is not true at all. I mean, I never played it on launch. I bought it
look,
with
even if I swam in cash every day and showered in the coins and everything, I would still be pissed about fucking over $70 for an unfinished game.
I mean, look,
It's about respect, you know what?
there are video games like that where when you make the jump from generations, that it really wasn't designed for an old gen console, and they put
Mm.
it on there anyway, and it runs kind of shit. Um, whether or not that is or probably was true for Cyberpunk 2077, most people getting the bugs were not trying to play it on an old PS4. They were, I mean, those that were had no chance. But even those who played it on PC, it was like, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah.
I heard something interesting about like the reason there are so many bugs and glitches these days, and it basically comes down to management. And because you have patches, whenever a glitch comes up, rather than fixing it immediately, they just go, "Oh, we'll fix it in post," and then they all
They
stack
don't
up.
it's in post.
So
Yes.
getting back to the anime, so NPC in the server had some complaints about the protagonist. So, um, did you get a chance to read them, Heracles? For example, he says that the protagonist has no will of his own. He
Uh, yeah, I don't really entirely agree with that. On the one hand, he's obviously his will is to save others. He's that very standard style of character in anime who wants to go out and save people when given a chance. So that's his will number one. Obviously, he also likes to beat down bullies, stuff like that. I really love the scene early on in episode one where uh, the prep school guy is like bullying him, and this is like the typical scene where he should beat the crap out of this bully, but the bully just has all this tech and hardware on him, so it's impossible. It's like a perfect scene in showing how all this tech undermines, like, I guess you could say, biological reality and what should actually happen in these
Mm.
scenarios. The injustice of it. Um,
It's a bit
uh,
like the thematics of Cyberpunk, m- like going against the thematics of anime. In that, in any other anime, he would have kicked
kicked
his
his
ass.
ass. Yeah.
Uh,
yeah.
this time,
No, but then he puts the whisk, puts on those that
mm,
tech, and then kicks his ass.
so
yes,
Yeah.
so
Anyways, what I was gonna say to answer your question, student, the he clearly has, once he meets Lucy, he's completely enraptured by her for a little bit. He's pushed away from her after he can't really tell whether he can trust or believe her after his first date, you might say, with her. But after that, once and he sort of hangs out with the broader group in general, with an idea that they're somehow more trustworthy, haven't really screwed around with him as much, which isn't. Once he does overcome that trust barrier with her, it's interesting. He becomes totally devoted to her, he does want to fulfill a wish or do something for her, but he's clearly also not obsessive about that at that point. He's clearly, especially after the sort of mentor character main dies, his big shtick is filling that guy's shoes and really seemingly trying to make his way up. And like Maine, he is totally obsessive about putting like the newest mods in and not caring about his limits or any of that shit.
Yeah. Um.
Yeah, all this stuff reminded me a bit about in Deus Ex Human Revolution. It wasn't as bad as this, but it was like a bit of, oh, if you become a cyborg, then you need the constant drugs to stop your immune system from kicking it out, and if you don't, you die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Well, to be fair, they're going crazy due to technology and the enmeshment of technology and consciousness is one of the main theme of old school cyberpunk.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that they made it into the main, basically the main theme here, more or
Well,
less.
well, Edgerunner kind of did that whole thing where instead of just you literally dying, it's if you don't take those drugs, you become fucking crazy.
Mm.
Hmm.
It could have been handled better, to be honest. There is the idea is wouldn't it wasn't exactly you turn crazy. The idea is that the consciousness of the machine, which is a paradox because it's a machine, it has no consciousness, invades your consciousness as a human, making you more machine. More or less, this was the basic conceit at the time that it would of what would happen in that case. And you can make it simply he goes crazy. That means he goes crazy. Yes, I suppose that means he goes crazy, but it can be simply it can be crazy in many ways. Let us say.
Hmm. Yeah, the impression I got as to what caused cyberpsychosis in this universe is that it's basically input overload. Uh, you get all these inputs that the human brain is like sort of not meant to handle,
Yeah.
and you put too many of them in there, and it 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 starts hallucinating. It doesn't know what to do with all this.
Yes, that was also an aspect sometimes in some stories at least. Like I don't remember what name was John Mnemonic. Perhaps you know that it was a story before and then a movie in the late 90s of this guy whose job in the cyberpunk world basically is that he has a cable connected to his brain and he can store information inside of his brain encrypted and he play encrypted information and basically he goes around being a carrier. You know what I mean? Like we don't want the nobody anybody to know this information. So you take it from here to here. Go take a plane, basically,
Yeah.
completely off the net, completely off everything else. And
Hmm.
this guy, in that story, there was this whole theme of your brain is not meant to handle like having encrypted information about uh, like. Shady dealings on drug dealers in Chicago and keep it in there encrypted and safe until you reach Tokyo. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
so
So
yeah.
it's part of it. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm sorry.
no, no, it's all right. There was an interesting point in the interview where, like, one of the producers called Honma says that so that basically the game delves deeply into the cyberpunk sci-fi themes, such as the existence of Johnny Silverhand, which you can tell us about in a moment, and the construct of converting human consciousness into technology. And he goes on to say that these are the most important themes in cyberpunk science fiction, and that is why we dare not touch them in the anime. So basically, um, the themes of the game and the anime would overlap. So I guess they try to not touch the themes. They try to make the anime different from from the game, and so because of that, they didn't
which is
discuss some
yeah,
themes. Yeah.
which is good policy. You don't want to literally be telling the same story over again.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what who Johnny Silverhand is? Thoughts?
I
Oh,
know that he's John Wick.
Yes,
Well,
basically it's John Wick because he is played by
yeah.
Keanu Reeves.
So I guess I can kind of give more context. So the whole plot of the Cyberpunk game is you basically upload a construct in your head, and once you get shot in the head, the construct in the form of Johnny Silverhand is trying to take over your whole body. So the whole plot of the game is you trying to find a cure for this affliction.
Mhm.
Mm.
right. So another complaint which I saw about the TV series is that, and that this is also something touched on in the interview. So like, so when asked what would you like to see in a sequel, the producer says that says this: I would like to see Faraday in his proper days, for example, since he seemed like a big shot but ended up looking like a small fry in the end.
Mm.
Um, he looked like a tough fixer, including his appearance, but he was a very small person. So I guess that would be a complaint about the villain of the story, and
Yeah.
the villains not being that present. I guess the villains, the real villains, are supposed to be like either the city or the corporations which run
Yeah, the
it.
cities and the corporations are an omnipresent villain throughout. Like, uh, what's his name? David finds out like early on that like everything ties back to the corporations at some point. It's sort of like a big palace economy.
In a
Um,
way, to be honest, which isn't really pleasant in a freaking game. But that's
mhm.
completely besides.
Yeah, yeah. I really, yeah, I don't know about the game, but yeah,
Mhm.
the idea is, so those are like the omnipresent villains, because you know that every single job that they're taking has to be tied back to one of the three corporations through like a zillion different handlers down the line. And those corporations themselves are kind of terrible and hard to work with. You got, and you see that with, well, you see that with what happens with the fixer that they get, the main guy who's giving them all the jobs, where like he screws up, he immediately gets killed. They plan on killing him. Obviously, the whole plan was to set up David and the rest just to test like some new military piece of hardware. It's like perfectly plausibly deniable like military hardware tests so they don't have to kill their own dudes. And then Lucy is like an experiment of these guys from birth, and these corporations are just horrible, evil
Yeah.
people. Yeah,
I
it would be interesting to know what. I mean, I feel like it somewhat overlooks it because the idea of this is that like everything's controlled by these monopolies. It would be somewhat interesting to know how they control those monopolies and whether it really is as strong as it is implied. But at the same time, that kind of misses the point of the story.
Yeah.
The point of the story is like they're trying to find an exit, and Lucy's actually the one who like has the most forethought after that. After like Maine dies and David nearly dies going back for him, uh, she's just absolutely shocked, and I'd say it scares her straight, and she doesn't. Well, obviously, she has to let her boyfriend take care of things for her. She doesn't really want to be involved with that anymore.
So, um, I guess this is a question for George and Heracles. Did you feel like the series did anything to try to quote unquote modernize the cyberpunk genre from its roots? Stuff like Blade Runner,
Um,
I guess.
not really. I would say aside from the whole maybe the aesthetic, but other than that, no, you could easily make the same story in a story in the 80s, and it wouldn't change that much aside from the aesthetic.
Okay.
No, I mean the thing about Cyberpunk is it came true. We're living in it. Yeah,
Hmm.
we'll
Yeah.
really almost everything except for like
The cool stuff, I guess.
the cool stuff, all the
Yeah.
technology has
Well,
more or less become true. These corporations have grown to the point where they're integral in terms of policy and shaping policy and stuff like that. Now, perhaps the thing that's somewhat unanticipated by Cyberpunk is that all of them are basically the same, and there's no real rivalry from corporation to corporation.
Yeah.
Whereas, like they basically treat in Cyberpunk corporations as being like almost the substitute for nation states and the new forms
Yeah.
in which through which warfare will be fought, and
yeah.
you don't even have that.
Not only that,
Uh
the whole cyberpunk sort of reminds me of I guess in terms of the violent Wild West, where it's just everyone is basically mercenaries trying to get money via information or killing people.
So, thoughts? Is this like a traditional thing in cyberpunk for like everything you do being tracked by the corporations? Like, there's nothing that you do which is
Sort of yes and sort of no, because in the very, very first stories we have like we are focused on the work of this protagonist working against this corporation. You know what I mean? But as soon as the role-playing game came out, people do world building, and then they came up with basically corporation being the new nation states, as Heracles said, and basically they run with that because you need to have a justification for the mercenaries and the player characters going around doing bull crap, basically, and astonishing quantity of property damage. With being also, it's also explaining how they don't end up in jail, basically. So yes, it is a pretty traditional meme inside of Cyberpunk. It is also a pretty good prediction in that in the science fiction idea, but it didn't come exactly to pass because it came out the corporation are perfectly good with lobbying the state and using the state for their benefit, and vice versa in the case of the bureaucracy. So we came up with the worst of both worlds in the end.
yeah, like this,
yeah.
like they say about 1984 and Brave New World. Like it's like we got the worst of all worlds or something. Anyway, um, did you guys listen to the dub or watch the sub version?
I listened to the dubbed version.
And what about you, Heracles?
Yeah, I listened to it sub. I maybe heard like a tiny bit of the dub, but not much. It was actually posting. It got better over time, but some of the early episodes, like they were really changing around the original Japanese script. I could like tell that for just even in the subtitles and someone in the dub, both to make it somewhat more faithful to the show, to the original game, but also to make it have like a harder American Netflix style edge, where like everyone's like doesn't get along, rude stuff like that, and I prefer not that edge, so I tried to watch the Japanese, and I think that was probably the better choice from what I heard of Lucy. I think her Japanese VA did a little bit better job. Not that the English VA did anything wrong, but just the Japanese VA played a better ingenue uh, than the English VA did.
Hmm.
Right. So all of the locations in the anime come from the game. Like, well, at least most of them are there in the game. Um, and so one of the things which they say that they were worried about is that people who played the game, the fans of the game, would would watch the anime and look for rough edges. Um, were you able to notice such I don't know insults to the holy CD Projekt canon in there, George?
Considering I'm not that invested in the story, I can't really say. The only thing I will say is, you know, citing along the actual release of the anime itself, they kind of did incorporate the game into the, I won't say the main storyline, but kind of the side mission that they have this whole thing where they have a drink named after the main character from Edgerunners as well.
Right. So all of the music, I think, at least most of it, came from the game as well. Did you like any tracks? There were quite a few for a 10 episode anime, I thought.
Um, I would say I like the end credits, the song at the end of the 10 episode anime, although I never really cried or anything. I just enjoyed the song.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So this is a cyberpunk story, but it's also. Would you describe this as a romance story, Heraclius?
Yeah, to a broader extent, yes. Lucy is the character that really brings him into this world and provides like the inspiration for David in this. Uh, and I really like the relationship between those two. Like Lucy in particular, both of them come across as characters who are just looking for connection, have half given up on it. Lucy in particular has this very female, and I'd say attractive, tendency to want to do things for others, but she also wants to keep it quiet and do it herself and take the responsibility entirely onto herself. And that, of course, leads to problems at the end.
So, at which point did you feel all the like the characters are trapped? There's nothing that they can do to get out of this. And do you think you can point to fingers at the main cast, anyone in the main cast
Well, yeah,
to
it
blame?
mostly
Yeah.
comes down to David. Like, if we're to track things in terms of how the show went, he meets Lucy and he gets involved in this entire group. Uh, uh, but then you have the time skip. He's basically living a married life. but he's still like going for like the best, most ridiculous hardware that he can get into himself, and he's trying to make his way up faster and faster. And he also makes another deal with this Faraday guy, despite knowing from experience that this guy isn't entirely to be trusted, and he doesn't really make a backup plan in case this guy tries to screw him over.
Yeah.
So I guess a problem, the problem which NPC had, and maybe to an extent that I have, is that like the protagonist doesn't have any dreams or aspirations of his own, or do you think? But just basically just projects. Like first, well, it was Lucy's wish, and the Lucy's wish, and also Main's um, wish onto himself. Um, did you, or did you not? Did you not see that as a character flow?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can certainly say that he took on Main's vision and probably wished to go even higher. But I mean, like, okay, it's like see, Caesar dreamed of what Alexander did. Does that make
No,
Caesar
but
a bad
no,
person?
but the point is that he already saw what happened to Maine because of that dream he had. So like, but
Oh
he's just
yes,
repeating the same mistake. So nothing has been
he
done.
he
Yeah.
he is repeating the same mistake. Yes, and yeah, that is his own character flaw and his own detriment. But I mean, like th- that itself shows that he's human.
Yeah.
That he thinks that he can overcome those issues. He's also clearly a more sensitive guy than Maine was, and looks out for his team more. So he's hardly identical.
So he keeps on saying that he's special. Does he actually believe that, or is he just
Well,
talking?
he believes that. He certainly believes that, and it's certainly because like we see from the start over and over and over again that he's able to resist this stuff a lot better than everyone else. He's just wired that way. He lets it get ahead of himself. I've seen some people make the point to an idea that the fact that he's somewhat sane by the end show that he kind of could handle it, and perhaps there's some truth to that. But at the end of the day, it was sort of like this ravenous Faustian desire to push further and further. And there's a quick scene with him and Lucy where Lucy's actually trying to talk him down from his obsession a bit, and they almost have something of a breakup over it. They mend it. So you can see how much this obsession of his is pushing some people away in his life.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, you. He was characterized as being a simp, but this argument he has with Lucy shows that, up to a point, let us say. Although it can also be argued that Lucy basically ruins him in a way, and then tries to stop him when she sees that it's getting out of hand and fails.
Mm.
But yeah, it's cyber implants in there are a bit portrayed like drugs. Like lots of people are convinced they can use like heroin a few times and then stop and it will be fine. But it's the guys that end up overdosing and dying. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
bit like imagine David as a crack addict, and his strength is just cracked addict strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, a bit.
So it's not like that. Like it's only the corporation's fault. It's also the character's fault, essentially.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, but the also the bit is that in order to get up in the world, you pretty much need those implants. So it's like
mhm.
it is also the corporation's fault because they have created a world in which you have to be a drug taker.
In my inner my inner ANCAP says they only created the product. People must choose on their own if they want it or not. How bad can I be? How bad can I be?
Yeah. So some of the people on the other podcast which I listened to were saying that like there's some commentary about American health insurance in there or something. Did you feel like that, or was just
Uh, no.
no, no?
Like, they do have a bit where it is like you could say it's a snub at more private health insurance, but you don't really have the American system is not remotely like that. What the system that they're showing is something entirely weird and different. Where it is like just like you get nothing uh if you go through like you literally have like a private emergency system which will like just pass you over and go somewhere else and not care about you, and then they derogatorily refer to the public version as like the meat sack or something like that, and the conditions are terrible. But I mean, like, it's certainly very fitting for cyberpunk and very fitting for like an idea of like crapsack world and something that could resemble that, but it doesn't particularly resemble the American system in that regard because like if you don't have health insurance in America, like you go to the hospital same as everyone else. You just have to pay ridiculous fees in order to pay it back, or more realistically, you just don't, and there's nothing much they can do to get you for it.
Yeah.
So it,
What are they going to do exactly in the cyberpunk world to get back your money?
Mhm.
so in the interview they also talk about how because it's a Netflix anime, they can have more sets and violence. Did you feel like it was appropriate and used correctly, Heraclius?
For the most part, yeah. Like it's a cyberpunk show, so you expect a little bit of that. I didn't have a particular problem with that. If anything, there was like too many popping heads and shit like that. Blood. Trigger did a outstanding job with all the animation on this. Like occasionally, you could tell the animators were getting like quite a bit over their shoes in a couple action scenes where they're really trying to show off, and you temporarily lose frame and idea of okay, what's going on, who's punching who here. But the technical ability on display is like simply incredible. Like they are one of the best anime studios in production right now.
Yeah, so as far as when we talk about animation in itself, they are pretty up there for many things.
Would you also agree with that, George?
Well, I would say in terms of animation, yes. As far as the sex goes, it sort of reminds me of the like very 80s and 90s OVA, albeit less over the top. And as far as the violence is concerned, I wouldn't say it's gory, but it is quite over the top.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the action, I think there was only one point when I didn't like it, which was, you know, well, first of all, it was that mech body which David gets. Um,
But yeah,
yeah,
I would say the last episode, no, the second last episode.
Mhm.
yeah, and also, yeah, basically has a fight with a bunch of corporations, and like, uh, it's a bunch of CGI cars being thrown around and falling. Yeah,
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 that stuff was a bit.
yeah.
Yeah, see, CGI for cars and stuff has been like the standard for a while, and it doesn't even bother
But
me at this point.
okay. Well, yeah, it bothers me. So, oh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a question of taste, but for me, like because it's mechanical and because it's going to look like slightly different than like people, as long as it doesn't clash too much, like I'm totally fine with it.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it's it's like I don't know. They're just falling around. Anyway, that's enough of that. As you said, it's a matter of taste.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. One thing that I did like, of course, was the city. The neon colors look nice, of course. But that looks, I just like that sort of thing. Anyway, um, what did you think about the characterization of for the rest of the crew? I guess let's go with Becca's character first because like there were a bunch of memes and all that. Did you feel like there was enough characterization for her? What did you think of her character in general, Heraclius?
Of Lucy.
No, not Lucy. Becca. Rebecca. Uh,
Becca. Oh yeah, she's a side character. That's all she exists to be. Like
Yeah.
she is motorcycle lolly. Boom. That's all you need to know about her. Like some people for some reason latched onto this character. I guess basically because they think Psycho Lolly is cool, and they also like that
You
she kind
know
of is looking
why?
out.
It's because. Oh,
Yes,
Yes, the
yes.
crying emoji.
Uh, I mean, like she's the most interesting bit about her is like that she actually cared about David at the end and was like
yeah.
constantly trying to shack up with him, and it was like, dude, this is like basically a
Well,
married guy. Who do you think you're fooling? How do
well,
you
her
think
whole
you're
thing
getting
is that
in here?
she likes David quite a lot, and she's sort of like I guess you would say a midget Harley Quinn, if you would
Yeah,
put it that way.
but I mean, yeah, she's Psycho Lolly. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the chat that her death scene. This is true a lot of the death scenes, like also of the guy with the ridiculous hands early on. What's great is they show how incredibly sudden death is in this universe.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he's just the hand guy's just screwing around with some dude and oh with uh fucking psycho lolly Rebecca. She's happy shooting and then just crushed. No build up, no like foreshadowing anything, just dies right there. And incredibly brutally too. So yeah, I thought that was quite well done.
right.
Well, yeah, that is pretty inside the canon of Cyberpunk. Like you are supposed to die like a little bitch the moment the real bad guys come around. Because yes, you are a punk kid full of enhancement, full of stuff, and so on and so forth. But this guy is a freaking mercenary paid by a corporation, to murder exactly the kind of people like you. It's not very fair. Nothing is to be portrayed as fair in Cyberpunk.
No,
So,
It's
no.
what did you think of um, of the portrayal of hacking in this anime, and how does it compare to, I guess, the best portrayal of hacking in fiction that you have seen?
I
Um,
mean, that's kind of an unfair comparison. I mean, it works for the anime and it's trying to be an anime, but it's obviously not remotely realistic unless I guess they're literally writing code in their head, which is
Yeah, it
Okay,
basically it look
fair enough.
basically it looked pretty dumb. Let's be honest. Um,
Well,
I mean,
the conceit, I think, is that they are writing code in the head as they go. I suppose
yeah,
that's the idea.
yeah, and to be frank, it makes it more like a cyberpunk feeling, and it is kind of neat when you can like it makes them almost like wizards when you can like have person like use their head, bring up some screens, and then like fry someone else's head.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's rule of
So
cool.
no, I think the conceit of it was quite well done and quite superior to like I'm glad it wasn't just literally some guy with a computer. Like, I mean, okay, if you're going to do Ghost in the Shell, fine, but this isn't Ghost in the Shell.
This is a trigger show, and yeah.
Yes.
Okay then. What about you, George? Do you have to say anything about the hacking?
Um, well, they kind of make the whole hacking more of a virtual VR. Like, oh, look at that, we're in a cool world where hacking real life is very similar to what we're doing now. Only instead we're gaining access to someone's computer via a terminal. I can't really see it as can't really make hacking real life interesting at all.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Mm.
Unless it's about the consequences of it or something like that. I mean, how do they do it in the I don't know in stuff like the neuromancer novels and all that thoughts?
In the old novels,
Yeah,
well, it evolves basically. It starts with um stuff like in Neuromancer, the protagonist is an aqualaker and it's portrayed like semi-realistically, let us say, even if with more advanced technology for the time, because it was written in the 80s and the conceit of what a computer could do, of even of the hardware specification of a computer that would have in like in the 2000s were far off. We have substantially better computers like in our pockets right now that what Gibson portrayed as being able to interface your brain with to enter the mainframe of this freaking of the servers of this freaking corporation with the sysadmin looking for you and wanting to fry your brain, more or less. Frying your brain was there from the beginning, though, so you know. But in time, Cyberpunk, like all the other punks, become more and more an aesthetic, and the hacking becomes more and more like we know it. They are going to hack into the mainframe of the computer, and the other hacker paid by the corporation is going to try to fry their brain, basically. And it gets resumed, and it gets more and more similar to what we have now. I've said it in the beginning. I think that Cyberpunk is in part to blame for the portrayal of hacking in books and movies today. But it was an evolution that at the time made sort of sense because you have to get on with the story at some point. You know what I mean?
right. So George, who do you think is best girl? I mean, there's not that much competition, but do go.
Uh, considering that I didn't remember much of the characters at all, they're all kind of the same. I mean, they're different, but I don't know. Considering I was not invested in the characters, I can't really say. I guess Lucy is sort of the supportive type character.
Hmm.
Pick Lucy, I guess.
Yeah, I would say Lucy. What about you, Heraclius?
Yeah, Lucy easily. Like I really like what they did with her where uh uh she's I mean, she reflects back on the main character herself, where she is that type of person where doesn't want to easily make connections, yet if circumstances push her towards it, she like immediately wants to make this strong connection because there's like so few people like she almost feels that she can trust or anything like that, and I thought that was all well done.
Yeah,
Hmm.
basically, if you want to get nerds to like your female characters, make them either a lolly or a manic pixie girl or something. Dream girl. Yeah, there you
By now it's a freaking science.
go. Okay then. Yeah, some people were making some comparisons between this story and Cowboy Bebop. Anything to say about that?
I mean, it's similar in that it's like a group of people who are basically bounty hunters, and they go around and do their jobs, and they're sort of like a semi-family, although they won't admit it to themselves. Like it's obviously similar.
Yeah. I also, I guess, there's a little bit of similarity in that it's a Western and Eastern production, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's firmly in in the realm of sort of, you know what I
Sort of,
mean?
yeah. Yeah, I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Cyberpunk is there on Mal. They haven't, because they get to decide what's an anime and what's not. Whereas something like Arcane probably is not up there. Um, okay then. I guess we could like talk about individual characters, but other than that, is there anything else you guys want to discuss?
I mean,
Well, I don't know. Most of the characters are pretty sketched. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
mean, I think we talked about the most interesting ones. Let us.
Well, I
no,
suppose
Hmm?
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say one character. He's not particularly interesting, but I guess I kind of like how he was introduced in the anime was Adam Smasher. His character himself is not interesting, but they managed to make him stand out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sure, yeah, that much they were able to do, yeah. But I mean, other than that, yeah, the heart of the story basically is David and Lucy, and almost everyone else is to a greater or lesser degree a side character. And
Hmm.
they do a very good job of like making it feel that there's probably more to those characters there. But it's not going to dwell on them and for too long or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, for example, Rebecca's brother barely gets, the guy, the first one to die, barely gets any
Yeah, yeah.
characterization. But that doesn't mean that is completely meaningless because, well, it shows that is meaningless in this setting, I guess. Um, so, um, George, do you feel like this would have been better off as a longer story with more episodes, or less episodes, or with a sequel, or
I would
hmm,
would say if you want to make the characters a bit more memorable, have a bit more episodes to kind of flesh out the characters. But in terms of what the story's going for, um, I would say the length is good in that aspect, but when it comes to some of the characters, it didn't really, in my opinion, left me much of an impression.
same here. I think it had the pretty colors, but yeah, I'll forget about this in a month. It will be like Devilman Crybaby, like people liked it, but then they
Oh
just forgot
god,
about it.
I far prefer this to Devilman Crybaby.
I
Devilman
do as well.
Crybaby, like, is overload of nihilism. I don't like that show.
But
Hmm.
let's be honest, when Crybaby is bad.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. This is a good show. I heavily disagree that this is going to be a forgotten show at all. This is the type of show that, I mean, for crying out loud, people are still talking about Cross Angie a decade later. Like, this is a show that will definitely be remembered and will definitely continue to be talked.
Would you like to
It's
see more of this?
no, because it's a complete story. And I'm not a huge cyberpunk guy or anything like that. Theoretically, you could have more adventures like this somewhere else, but I'd really just rather that Studio Trigger go on to whatever their next new, interesting original production is.
Come to think of it, I can't think of many other Trigger shows which are adaptations. But then, can you guys think of it?
Well, or adaptations outside of light novels, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Or at least the ones
Well,
which I remembered for are usually original stuff. Yeah, sorry.
well, I guess what they could do in terms of making an anime is you could make an anime for different mythologies. Like I would be interested to see an anime based on ancient Chinese mythology, for example.
Yeah, I've sometimes thought about the fact that, uh, in a way, the fact that there hasn't been like a gospel anime almost shows like how much there isn't that much cultural strength of Christianity in America. Because like if let's say we had like the culture of like the 50s or 60s, there would have been like five or more anime based off the Bible at this point. Uh,
Yeah,
but
as I can only name one anime that's based off the Bible. It's by
it,
Toy.
oh, is that the one where it's Buddha and Jesus running around?
No, there's an actual anime that retells the Bible. Well,
Okay,
I won't say all the Bible, but parts of it.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I remember that. I remember one very old one made by, in collaboration, I think, with Osamu Tezuka, about
Mm.
at the time when he was doing the life of Buddha in comics, stuff like that.
so thoughts. Do you think that the cyberpunk genre has anywhere else to go, or like has it just said everything which it has to say and it's done and over? A bit.
Well, you can go further with the themes of, with exploring the themes of the consequence, technology and its consequences being a disaster for the human race, basically, by other, basically by going ahead with the technology and so on and so forth. But as much as nothing. Heraclius is correct in that nothing kills a genre more than the genre becoming true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen. Yeah. I mean, so earlier on, Heraclius was saying that like he didn't want to play the game because like, oh, that's like, why would I want to like be in a world like that? So why do you think?
Yeah, I mean to expand on that like a little, you do have games like Deus Ex, which obviously take place like Deus Ex is also in the cyberpunk world and is also in
Yeah.
kind of, but the difference is like you're an agent, you're a cop, and like your whole bit is like unraveling all the mysteries and the conspiracies and kind of undoing all those.
Mm.
Whereas if you're just like one citizen among many in this kind of terrible world and you don't have that much power, I mean, that's not, to me, that's not inherently like an interesting video game.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess like I saw some posts of people on Lane Chan, of people being like, oh, I want to be in a cyberpunk world, and like people are telling, obviously telling this guy like, are you retarded? We just like it
Yeah.
because like it's a genre of fiction and blah blah blah. So, thoughts. What do you think? What is the like? Why do people want to role play in that setting? Why are there people who even think that they would like to be in that set? I guess the simple answer would be like a cool robot arm, laser eyes, and something
Yeah,
like that.
that yes, but in a way, the role-playing game was very true to its roots as all the role-playing games, that is, as fan fiction of D&D, that is, in the actual role-playing Cyberpunk 2020, what you do is that you are a fucking adventurer and you get paid for things, and eventually you can grow to in power and stature to rival, the chiefs of corporations, or become a chief of corporation if everyone else is gone, and so on and so forth. And so you, by advancing in level, if you allow me, you get eventually to the point in which you can do some stuff to make things better. You know what I mean? That is always the conceit, but the conceit also remains that the world itself is static, just like in D&D, nothing you can do in D&D will make a multiverse, a D&D multiverse, which doesn't need adventurers and in which there is not monsters around ever again in the world. You know what I mean?
To kill all the
Yeah,
monsters.
that's
Yeah. Sorry.
and that's always what feels like a little weird sometimes in the cyberpunk world
Mhm.
is like some things will be like a little bit more fragile, and you can see how things could like sort of come apart. I mean, to its credit, Psychopaths actually deals with that pretty straight on. And like in that, like Japan is like an outlier compared to the rest of the.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying, I can't hear Heraclius. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just saying that that to its credit, that it seems odd in some of these that everything is so static, whereas you'd expect these situations to be like basically running on fumes. These incredibly corrupt corporations running things, and you'd expect some sort of like major calamity, or just breakdown to slowly eat away at them and destroy them over time. And
Mhm.
to its credit, a show like Psychopaths actually kind of does deal with that, both how like the totalitarian cyberpunk world like deals with that type of decay, and also with like those who would want to bring about its destruction, and also that their little pocket of civilization is not the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's that like it's totalitarian, but not like properly totalitarian in the cyberpunk settings. Like it's not like anybody
Well,
who opposes it. Yeah. Sorry. Go on, Heraclius.
yeah. Like the bit is the entire conceit, I guess you say, of cyberpunk is technology allows them to escape to allows them to escape the natural way in which things should go. So, like, the fact that they can't get any motivated soldiers to fight for them is like irrelevant because hey, we just put enough tech into this psycho and we keep him on his leash, and that's all the security we need. That's sort of like the central basic conceit. Uh,
Mhm.
the general issue I see with, especially with the cyberpunk world, is like depicted in this, is that with that level of corruption and evil going on, there's going to be all sorts of bits where not only are people just unable to, unwilling to well, let's put it this way: you're gonna have so much decay going on, and so much lack of control in certain areas that it naturally leads to areas where new power centers might form. I think.
Yes,
Uh,
that
I,
would
I
happen,
mean,
but
in and of itself, the idea that there's like so much crime and whatever, like that itself speaks to a great breakdown of things. Like if they actually attempted to, these corporations, they could crack down on all this crime and be like decent overlords, but
It,
they
it,
don't want to because they find it useful as cover in order to go at the other corporations. But that also is like an institutional weakness for them.
Well, not only that, it's also the aspect of in this world, everyone's pretty much out to get for everyone else. Corporations not
Yeah,
inclusive.
and it's the old bit of uh, a group of knights, a group of trusting comrades just cleaves straight through a bunch of traitors. Hell, we even see like a small bit of that here. David is like way over his skis, and yet he still makes it to like the center of this corporation and screw things over for him. Like, imagine if he actually had a goal of like overthrowing things and had really taken his time. He could have done all sorts of stuff.
oh yeah,
hmm. I,
the the whole one problem I have with your like I think the genre is studied and meant to be static, basically.
Oh
That
yeah.
is the reason why the stuff like that doesn't happen, basically. The cyberpunk universe is always portrayed a few months, a few years before the eventually the stuff collapses and every and these people with the actual stuff together gets out or append the system, and it is made so by choice, basically, for the because the idea is portraying the setting and the feeling and the aesthetic, more or less, more than
Yes.
telling you exactly what would happen if society was like that. Although
like it's
although people still try, you know.
supposed to be edgy and depressing or something, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's all according to plan.
right. So somebody could make a satire of this pretty easily. I don't know if it already exists. Maybe it does.
Mm.
Um, so I guess it's time for ratings. Let's start with you, George.
Uh, I would say a 6. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's kind of just fairly standard in my opinion.
What about your thoughts?
6.5. I I haven't finished it, but I haven't seen anything particularly offensive up to now, you know. That would make the score drop too much. But yeah, it's nothing
Revolutionary.
as if anything, is slightly above average,
Yeah,
6.5.
great. What about you, Heraclius?
Yeah, I mean, I'd give it an 8. I'd say this is well above the par that you see in most modern anime. So I think it deserves a great deal of the credit and recognition that it's getting.
Yeah, maybe it's just that modern anime is somehow below average these days. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Mm, a 7. Yeah, 7.
I
Uh,
mean, it's sort of like the Fate Zero or any cyberpunk uh, sort of story problem where either you can sort of get into these characters despite it being a crapsack world, or you can't, and that's going to determine your taste for the show.
yeah, but I thought you didn't like Crapsack worlds, but he still got into them, the characters anyway. So there must be
Mm.
something there. Yeah. Any final thoughts, or shall I end the stream? Okay. Nothing. Okay, I'll end the stream then.
Okay. See you
I mean,
people.
on
It's been nice.
Uh,
see you later, Fox.
See ya.
yeah. Okay.
I mean, on the topic of not liking crapsack worlds, it's not that I dislike them. Like, I like Geno Ibuchi, for example. He tends to do that. I just don't like pure fucking nihilism in there. And you saw that in things like Devilman Crybaby, and it's like, why am I watching this?
Yeah. Would it be correct to say that you like your crap sack with a way out?
Yes, yes, that would be
That's
correct.
fair enough.
Like I'm the person in Psychopaths who's rooting for Makishima to win.